So in the past months, Fujifilm has attracted a lot of attention, and not in the good way. With the many issues that we all have faced as Fuji users on our cameras, Fujifilm is now at a turning point. Either they fix their cameras with the new firmware, or they will see potentially a big exit of customers from their brand. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Thierry Gibraltar, and I'm a professional photographer and videographer based in Tokyo, Japan. I use Fujifilm in my work, but also for my personal life, right, to document my life, my travels, and more. I've been talking about Fujifilm on this channel for a few years now, and when I see myself and other creators as well having more and more issues that don't seem to be addressed by the brand itself at the moment, the last firmware is from I don't know how long ago, but we've been waiting for quite a while now. It kind of makes us lose hope and lose faith in the brand itself. And if, as a person who is so interested in their camera and has been talking about it for such a long time, is losing faith, I can only imagine that the larger user base, soon, more sooner than later, will slowly start to move somewhere else. Now, Fujifilm hasn't stayed silent in the last 6 months, right? They did recently release the new Fujifilm X M5 as well as 2 other lenses. Now, the X M5 for me doesn't bring anything new. It's just an older sensor repackaged in a cheaper body. They just brought back also the dial that you can see on the XT50 with the film simulation dials. I'm absolutely not excited by this camera, and in fact I don't necessarily I'm happy about seeing this kind of camera. Sure, it's a good thing to bring people into the system on the price point, but this kind of camera is honestly just a repackaging and geared towards TikToker and influencers, which is a market that they want to capture. It's totally understandable. But personally, this doesn't bring me any enjoyment or excitement at all. And in fact, the whole repackaging and recycling of old sensors or old component is kind of a trend that we've seen Fujifilm doing in the past couple of cameras, right? This is something that I was quite critical of when it comes to Sony. This is something that I did not like because they had, so many cameras that were basically doing the same thing. But it seems like Fujifilm is following this trend now. We see them having several cameras that pretty much do the same thing, have the same sensor, the same components, have small amounts of limitations here and there. And yes, it's a strategy to get market shares, etc. But I don't know. This doesn't really bring excitement to me at all. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, another new product that they brought out to the market was the XF 500mm f5.6, I think. Now, this is something that was definitely lacking in their lens lineup. A long photo lens, very long photo lens that could allow you to really capture wildlife or sports for people who really want to focus on those particular niches, right? And I think that it's good that they brought that to the market. And for the people who are interested in this kind of niche and shooting style, I think it's a good thing that they have access to this particular lens at the moment. But personally, again, that's not something that I'm too interested in, and that I don't think that I would cover more than this on this channel. And finally, we have the XF 16 to 55mm f2.8 Mark II. Now, this is really, I would say, more for the general public, right? Quite an exciting news because the Mark I was quite outdated. Now, not in terms of image quality. I think that image quality on the Mark I was still good. However, and mostly in terms of size and weight. The 16 to 55mm f2.8 Mark I from Fujifilm is quite a heavy lens, right? And in fact, it is so heavy that some full-frame counterpart with the same kind of focal length and the same kind of aperture actually were as heavy, if not a little lighter than Fujifilm, the Fujifilm option, which is APS-C. Which is why Fujifilm came up with this new Mark II version of the lens to kind of revise it and kind of update it. which is a good thing. Now, not only did they decrease the size and the weight of this lens, but they also came up with the switch mechanism to allow you to have click or declick aperture, which is better for video. Now, they also improve the focus breathing on the lens, meaning that now you barely have any focus breathing, meaning that it's a great lens to use for video as well. So there are some improvements when it comes to the Mark II compared to the Mark I that are very noticeable. Now, the only caveat that I would say with this lens is that it still focuses externally, which is not ideal, especially when you want to use it for video, because if you want to mount it on a gimbal or if you want to stabilize it in a certain way, and you want to zoom in, zoom out, you will have some changes in terms of balance there. Now, it's not the end of the world, it's not a deal breaker, but it's something that that could be improved on. But it's great that they actually released a Mark II with so many improvements. But while they released those 3 products, there was still a big missing announcement from this particular event, right? This X Summit. It's of course the firmware update. Now, the firmware update is supposed to come in early November. We don't have an exact date yet, but I believe that more than new cameras or new lenses, the firmware update is going to be extremely critical and is going to be a turning point for Fujifilm. For the past more than 6 months, I forgot exactly how long, people have been complaining for firmware 6 and firmware 7, which both had atrocious autofocus on the X-T5, the X-H2S and the X-H2. In fact, on this channel I also made some tests that you can check, and you can see that the autofocus is completely destroyed even compared to the first version on the X-H2S, which raises quite a lot of questions, right? And the question that it raises is the quality control approach that they have. How comes that the first firmware of the brand, of the particular camera in the X-H2S, which is supposed to be their, the top of the line camera, right? How come that first firmware is better in terms of autofocus than the latest that you have? Meaning that your quality control is not working, meaning that the people that deploy the software don't understand continuous integration, continuous test, don't understand how to properly deploy and make sure to test the actual features that you should test in the autofocus, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, hey, I know everything about what they do, etc. I don't know their process, I don't know how it works, but having experience as an engineer, right? Before you deploy something, you're supposed to test if it works, right? You're supposed to test not only in a lab, but also in real life. You're supposed to make sure that everything works before you deploy it to the public, right? Especially when you have so many users that can be very vocal sometimes, and rightfully so, right? Can be vocal about what's working and what's not working. Now, second problem is that when there were so many videos about how the autofocus was not working, Fujifilm has been so silent for such a long time without any reaction saying, hey, we acknowledge that there were some issues, etc. So that's also a problem. And it kind of makes me wonder, okay, how do we know if there won't be an issue in the future? Let's say I purchase a new camera that they're going to release, right? How can I trust that there won't be an issue in the future? That the autofocus won't be completely crap after 3 firmware, or that maybe it's not the autofocus, maybe something else will be crap, right? Maybe some other feature won't work. And that's a really big trust issue that currently I have in the brand, right? It's like, okay, if you are not able to point out where was the problem and being able to either roll back to it real quick to understand what's going on, or to just let people know what's going on, it poses a huge issue, right? If you don't know what's going on, that's a really, really big issue. If you know what's going on and you don't want to tell people what's going on either, that's another issue. That's with the communication, right? But anyway, there is an issue somewhere. So yeah, I really want them to address what has gone wrong, how they fixed it, and how they intend also on making sure that it doesn't happen in the future, because that's the most important thing at the moment. People have lost faith in their development team, right? It's like, okay, you've been kind of screwing us for like a year or so, and the camera has been getting worse and worse. So yeah, what's going on with that? What are the consequences, and how do you make sure it's not going to happen in the future? I think that is what needs to happen with the new firmware update, right? Not only the firmware release, but also the announcement that goes around it. And one more point that I would have with the new firmware update is that I don't think that it's good enough now to just make it as good as firmware 1.03, for example, on the XH2S, right? It has to just be, you know, better than what they have ever released, right? It has to be good enough to adhere to industry standard. They have to be as good as other brands. Otherwise, I don't see why people would not switch due to the trust issues that I mentioned before. And autofocus, of course, is one of the issues that they have, right? But it's a huge issue because let's say they are only targeting enthusiasts and beginners, right? Well, enthusiasts and beginners, they don't necessarily know how to deal with manual focus. They don't want to deal with that, right? So they need autofocus. And then you have the pros, the professionals, right, who work using your cameras, and by having an autofocus that is not reliable, you basically tell them that they can't use your camera because they will have, you know, they have a risk of having unusable footage that they would have to pay for, or they would have to reimburse the client because they were hired to do a job that they can't do using your camera, right? So autofocus, if you use it, is extremely important, right? Personally, my solution was simple. I've been using my Fujifilm cameras for video. For photo, I think it works enough for me to work around it, right? It works enough for me to have acceptable results. But for videos, I've been using only like manual lenses or cinema lenses with my XH2S recently because I can't trust the autofocus that comes out of it, and I don't want to, you know, to have the risk of me going on a client shoot, shooting a proposal, shooting an engagement shoot, etc., and then, you know, oh, sorry, I captured your proposal, but you're out of focus. So, but the tree behind you is in focus though, so it works, I guess. No, I can't say that to my client, right? So yeah, I'm only using manual focuses, lenses right now. And when you see how much Fujifilm lenses cost, right? Like if I got all my 18mm f1.4, my 33mm f1.4, you know, I got the 56 as well. Well, those are supposed to be faster focus lenses, but yeah, they're just faster to fuck up the focus rate. So it makes you wonder, okay, what is the purpose of having those, I mean, such expensive lenses if they can't focus because of the body, right? What is the purpose of having a body that advertises that it can focus at this price point, while you can have at the same price point, I'm just looking, for example, the Pixis, right, is around the same price point as the XH2S. You can have internal B-roll, you can have more dynamic range, you can have a full frame sensor. So what is the purpose? So which is why I'm really hoping that Fujifilm is listening to the community and is really preparing a good announcement. Because for me personally, this will be the last chance that I give them to fix their autofocus, especially for video, because I can't jeopardize my business more. If it doesn't work on their side, then I'll have to move on and find something else. So yeah, I truly believe that, yeah, Fujifilm is at a turning point now, because if they don't fix their autofocus, you will see a massive exit of creators, a massive exit of users, enthusiasts and pros, and well, they will talk about it and more people will follow the move, right? So yeah, Fujifilm, if you listen, just fix your autofocus and make sure it's up to the industry standards, because it's a turning point for you. Alright, thank you for watching today's video. It was kind of a rant, not really a rant, but mostly my feelings about what's going on with the autofocus. But yeah, thank you for watching it, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't yet and you want to be aware of when those videos are released, well, make sure to subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll see you in the next one.